Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers Kieran here. We are at the Manchester Marathon. We are just at the start. It's got about 20 minutes till go time. Today I'm going to be testing out the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris. I've also got the Polar V3 up against the Garmin 4 and a 965 paired to a H10. And I've also got the Grit X2 Pro to see how those go. I've got another exciting piece of kit on my left arm here. I've got the Flowbio S1 hydration sensor. It's been the first time out to see how that goes, see what information I get out of running a marathon from that, which is tracking my sweat and salt loss, give me the information afterwards. Today's race plan is quite simple. I will go out there, run this whole thing on field, see what I get. I believe that's the way that I will get the time that my training deserves. I won't blow up trying to chase a time that I'm not really ready for. I'm feeling good. Weather's pretty much perfect, and we're about 20 minutes out. So yeah, the other thing I'm going to say, I'm not shooting this whilst I'm running, because I'm actually going to try and run this properly and fast, so there won't be any cutaways of the race itself unless I get my phone out, which might or might not happen. So apologies for that, but we'll get our serious head on today. So anyway, let's go do it. So, Manchester Marathon done, we just crossed the line. Nathan here, what'd you do?
2:53.33.
Someone else in the background. Wait, where are you going next year?
London! London's calling! And I answered!
2:57 here. I don't know what I've done, I haven't checked, but I reckon I'm under 3 somewhere, but well done, boys. So then that is the Manchester Marathon done. 2:54 something or other, which is a PB for me by about 3 minutes. Ran it all on field, didn't have a clue what was going on out there. Quite a hard race, quite busy in the beginning, quite narrow and tight. One big hill in Altrincham which nearly made me want to go home crying to my mummy. Got through it though, held on, struggled towards the end, and it's done now standing outside Old Trafford. I've bumped into loads of you out there. Loads of people came and said hello, which is absolute magic at the end of the race. It's really lovely to sort of speak to you guys and hear how you got on. So thanks for coming over and saying hello. How did the shoes do? So the Metaspeed Sky Paris, they ran really well. Everything I wanted them to do, what I thought they would do. Running really well, in good form. And even towards the end, actually, when I was hanging a little bit, they gave me that little bit of energy. There's no hot spots, no blistering, no discomfort, no movement in the shoes. Nicely controlled for me because I was up kind of mid to forefoot. And they did a really cracking job. It's always a good sign. Like right now, I'm walking around them, I don't feel like I immediately want to take them off, which is really good. No black toenails. And gave me the energy that I needed all the way through that. So great. I've got the S1 hydration sensor on. I've stopped that. I'll check the data when we get back to the office. And likewise with the watches and the other bits and pieces, the Sennheiser Momentum Sport headphones, I will crunch the data and do a wrap back in the office about that. But that is the Adidas Manchester Marathon done. I'm going to go and get myself an Erding alcohol-free beer and hope that the hips don't lock up too much. But well done everyone how we ran out there today. So I'm back home in my office the day after the Adidas Manchester Marathon, where I managed to run a 3-minute PB with a 2:54.40, so I'm still super buzzing about that. I ran the whole thing on field, maybe went out a little too hot, but managed to hold on in the end for dear life, basically the last 6 miles. But anyway, so first up, let's chat about the event. I thought the organisation was pretty much spot on. Getting to the start area out near Old Trafford was super simple from the town centre. The pre-race brag drop in the Lancashire County Cricket Ground, all of that was relatively slow stress, pretty fuss-free. There were some smart moves at the race, like sticking a bank of urinals and portaloos right before the start line. I mean, kind of almost right at the start line, which is really convenient. There's plenty of space, so they've got enough room to do that. It was a real tick in the box. Overall, I thought the race itself was great. A few things that made it challenging. Like, I think it was a really sort of crowded start. It is quite narrow in the beginning. Despite the 32,000 runners going off in different waves, the early miles were still very cramped. There were some narrow bits and some funnels into bollards and cycle lanes and bit. It was all a bit chaotic and it was quite hard to find rhythm initially. That made it sort of challenging to run a steady pace, trying to do it on feel. There were a few sections that narrowed quite quickly where I think there could have been earlier warning from the stewards and stuff. But after the first 10Ks or so, things got a little clearer and easier on that front, and it spread out as it usually did, and it became quite an easy race to run. Now, despite the claims of this being fast and flat, there are a few testing hills. There was one around mile 16. There's another couple kind of around 20, 22. It's certainly not Seville or Berlin flat, There are some big long straights too, and if that's your nemesis, sort of running along dual carriageways in straight lines, it makes it difficult. You've been warned. We also had to fight some pretty big headwinds on those sections too. Water stations were nicely spaced and well marked. There were good crowds and support pretty much the whole way. And all in all, I'd sort of be happy to recommend this race. I think it falls on the same day as London next year, and I'd say it's a pretty good alternative to that. Onto the shoes then. And so during the race, I tested the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris. Actually, my second marathon in this shoe. The other was a solo 26.2 around London. There's a video on the channel you can find. I chose these because I felt they delivered a punchy, lightweight ride with good energy, good immediacy from the foam, and a comfortable race fit that's kind of snug enough but not cramped. Now, thankfully, yesterday they delivered everything that I needed out there. Good controlled energy from the midsole plate combo from start to finish. The comfort was spot on. Some race shoes, carbon race shoes, you can really be aware of, and it's a sort of trade-off between a little bit of discomfort in return for that extra energy efficiency. But I largely forgot I was wearing these. They disappeared really nicely on the foot. There was no harshness or trouble from road impact. They delivered on that in terms of midsole protection. I was worried about this narrower platform being less forgiving with a tired or imperfect form, but even as I got more ragged in those final 6 miles, I still felt pretty well controlled. And for most of this race, I ran mid to forefoot in good form. And when you're moving like that, engaging this midsole, the shoes respond. I think the best compliment that you can really pay to a shoe is if it delivers everything you need on the day. And that is exactly what I got from the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris. I think ASICS has made a great race shoe here. And as I said in our review, the only caveat really is that I think if you need to be running well on that kind of narrow platform and with not much kind of heel here and quite a bit of wobble, it might not look after you so much if you're dropping back to kind of much slower, heavier, ragged form. So if you're not sure, I'd go for something a little more reliable. But if you think you've got a chance of running all out, then I think the Metaspeed Sky Paris is going to do a good job for you. Now, I also tested this interesting new wearable, the Flowbio S1, that aims to measure hydration and salt loss through sweat. The sensor can be clipped to a chest strap on a heart rate monitor, or you can wear it on your arm on a separate strap, and it will read your sweat to deliver insights including total fluid loss, sweat rate, sodium loss, and the sodium concentration of your sweat. At some point, it will be able to reveal that data in real time, maybe even send it to your watch or give you alerts. But for now, it spits out a post-run report with recommendations for how much fluid and sodium you need to replace after your efforts. Now, I did a test back in the Flowbio labs with this a few weeks back, but this is the first time I've trialed it in the wild. The first thing to say here is that I have no way of telling if the information is accurate. The makers obviously say that it is, and they've tested it up against kind of lab machinery. But now in terms of use, it's pretty simple and straightforward to get set up and pair it via Bluetooth to an app. You can link your Garmin and Coros account, and then it'll pull your run data from there to overlay. Now the sensor itself is quite chunky. I wore it on my tricep and it took a few attempts to connect and get the session started pre-race. The main button here isn't all that user-friendly, and I often find the flashing light code that you can get on some wearables where it's like a blinking light, I find it sort of pretty stressful at the start pen, but it's flashing and you've forgotten what they mean. I couldn't also get it to turn off the night before, so I had to leave it on charge to make sure that it wasn't dead. But then once it's on and the session is started and you're good to go, you can largely forget that you're wearing this, which is nice. Post-run, the sync failed for me a couple of times. I had to sort of repeat and try a few times to get it to work, but once it went through, the data that you get is very simple and straightforward at the moment. It told me that I apparently lost 2,500 milligrams of sodium and a little over 2 litres of fluid along the route. I probably drank around 750 mils of water. So in theory, I should need a bit more than a litre to rehydrate. And I can tell you that I drank much more than that, and I was still peeing yellow at 10 PM last night, if that's not too much information. So I'd say this is as good as a rough indicator rather than a prescriptive kind of definite what you need to drink and replace. Now, had I been able to see that sweat loss in real time, would I have drunk more on the route? I probably doubt it. I was managing my stomach in the final 10k. The hardware definitely could be finessed for sure. I think it could be more compact. I think the tech though is fascinating. Now, I also tested the Sennheiser Momentum Sport. We've got a review on the channel that you can check out. These are headphones with built-in heart rate tracking. Now, since we did our review, I've had more runs where the heart rate was actually more reliable. But yesterday, it failed again for this race. It started out tracking okay for the first 10 minutes, but then it flatlined at 140-something BPM, and it was that way for the rest of the race. Now, whether I adjusted the buds or something, I'm not sure, but it was just a natural thing to do to get the fit right. And there's no warning once you've done that if the HR drops out. There's no kind of verbal alert or anything. So that's unfortunately another big fail for these buds. On the flip side, the fit was comfortable, the audio performance was good, and the anti-wind setting did help a lot into some of the headwinds that I was running into. I really like the easy tap, doing the cheek gesture that changes the music as well. And the battery life drained about 40% over the course of the 3-hour race. Now for watches, I wore the Polar V3, the Grit X2 Pro. I also had the Garmin 4 and a 965 paired to a H10 on my running belt, along with the Polar Flow app that was tracking GPS 2. I had all watches using the multi-band dual frequency settings for best accuracy. Now, when you do these kind of tests, it's really rare for watches to agree. There's always a little bit of deviation between them, but both the Polar watches and the Flow app and the 4 and a 965 sort of clock between 2649 and 2650 and 2648 miles. I've never seen the distances be so close. And overall GPS accuracy, there wasn't really much to choose on the performance. If you dig into the tracks, both the V3 and the Grit X2 sometimes went wide off roads, but nothing too crazy. In general, they stuck to the roads from the path quite nicely, and I say they gave a really good solid GPS performance. When it came to the battery life, in the best accuracy mode, the Grit X Pro 2 burned 7% over the course of the 3-hour marathon, while the Polar V3 burned 8%, slightly more. So not much to choose between them there either. On heart rate accuracy, both watches and the H10 chest strap went quite wild in the first few miles. I've no idea why. Hitting 180 beats per minute plus. Some of them even went up to 200, which is definitely rogue. The Grit X2 Pro and the H10 settled and largely matched beat for beat after that, while the V3 Optical clocked some bigger peaks and dips and had me working much harder in the final hour than the chest strap and the Grit X2 Optical. So there you have it, that was my race test at the Adidas Manchester Marathon. It was fantastic to meet so many of you out there after the race. Thanks for coming over and saying hello, and big congrats to everyone who ran. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it. Subscribe if you're not already. If you're interested in more on the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris, I'm popping our review up on the channel now. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. We hope to see you again soon, and as ever, happy running, people.